Everyone. I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of
Recording in progress
of the Planning and Transportation Commission for Wednesday, August 12th, 2026. And so could you please call the roll?
Yes. Chair Chang?
Here.
Vice Chair G?
Here.
Commissioner Aiken?
Here.
Commissioner Heckman?
Here.
Commissioner James?
Here.
Commissioner Templeton?
Here.
For the record, we have quorum.
Thank you. First up, Assistant Director Armour, do we have any agenda changes, additions, and deletions?
Do we need a statement from Vice Chair G?
Oh, yes, we do. So Vice Chair G, would you like to make a statement?
Yes. Oh, wait. Sam, do you happen to have the language that I need?
Yeah, so Vice Chair G is joining the meeting under just cause. Yeah. For
okay. I'm attending this meeting under just cause. Do we say anything else?
And he's only attended one meeting virtually in the past calendar year using standard Brown Act rules.
And then does he need to say if anybody else is in the room?
No.
No. Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, what
All
Sam
right.
said.
I'm sorry. Yes, he does need to disclose if there are any individuals over the age of 18 in the room with him.
Oh, then yes, there are 2 individuals over the age of 18 in the room with me.
And Councillor Yang, is there anything else that needs to be said about that?
Don't believe so. I will follow up if there is additional information we need.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now on to agenda changes, additions, and deletions.
Thank you. We don't have any changes to the agenda, but I did want to acknowledge that as we just did the roll call, that one of our commissioners wanted to acknowledge that it did not include Dr. Peterson, given his resignation earlier this week. I would like to express our gratitude for his service over the last year. We do expect that recruitment to fill that vacancy will occur. There'll be a special recruitment, but the schedule for that has not yet been set. Thank you.
Okay, yes, thank you to Commissioner Peterson for his service over the last year. Our next agenda item is in-person public comment on items that are not on the agenda tonight. We will have time later for items that are agendized. So do we have any cards or raised hands?
To the chair, I have not received any public comment cards for general public comment. Items on the agenda.
Okay. Okay, then with that, we'll move on to city official reports. Assistant Director Armour.
Yes, thank you and good evening. So we'll pull up the standard presentation, just giving you a preview of upcoming meetings. On the next slide, we've got August 26th will be your next scheduled meeting. We are anticipating a discussion of the proposed process for creating objective design standards for the South of Forest area, the SOFA area, and a discussion of a minor code amendment in regards to residential in the ROLM-E district. And then you have your next scheduled meeting would be September 9th. At this time, it's uncertain whether we'll have items for that agenda or not. It's complicated slightly that we've got a special council meeting at the same time on the same evening because of the Labor Day holiday. And so we're looking at the agenda and whether there's a possibility to shift agenda items so that we don't have that conflict and can be heard at a later date. I also wanted to remind the commissioners that we've got the September 16th Board and Commissions recognition event for you, and thank you for your service. Next slide. A little bit of update on City Council. City Council did return from their summer break this week, and they approved on consent the second reading of the ordinances for the shrink wrap rule and the retail vitality ordinance that came to you. They also discussed extensively the Crescent Park traffic calming. Thank you, Commissioner Templeton, for joining and providing the perspective from the PTC. And they did approve with some direction to try and minimize the size of the bulb out that was of particular interest. Then next week, they are scheduled to discuss the accessory dwelling units ordinance and a project at 762 San Antonio Road. This is not a project that came to the PTC, but given the interest in housing, I thought I would mention it. It is one of the Builder's Remedy projects. And that concludes my presentation. We do have Office of Transportation here to share a presentation as well.
Great, thank you. Hi, good evening, Mr. Arce.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair, members of the Planning and Transportation Commission. My name is Ozzie Arce, Senior Transportation Planner, here to present the Office of Transportation's updates for tonight. Next slide, please. Starting with project updates, the Council formally adopted the 2026 Bicycle and Pedestrian Transportation Plan recently on June 15th. Thank you to the community and the Commission for being a part of that effort. Additionally, this past Monday, as was mentioned, Council approved advancing the Crescent Park traffic calming project into final design for permanent construction. On the funding front, the city recently secured 3 exciting grants. First, a $500,000 vehicle registration fee intelligent transportation system grant through VTA to modernize aging traffic signals along Embarcadero Road from US 101 down to Pali. We also received 2 Transportation Fund for Clean Air grants, about $50,000 for citywide bike racks, and about $83,000 to add bike lanes along East Bay Shore Road as part of a recent repaving work that the city is looking at doing. So piggybacking off of that. Next slide, please. Moving to other transportation news as students head back to class. The Palo Alto Unified School District is enacting a new safety rule that bans Class 2 and Class 3 e-bikes on all PAUSD school campuses starting this month, August 2026. Please note that e-motorcycles also remain strictly illegal. To support community awareness and education, the city has launched a dedicated webpage featuring comprehensive safety guidance for both e-bikes and e-motorcycles, including a way to report unsafe behavior. Next slide, please. To further support a safe start to the school year, we have also had several community bike repair stations currently underway this week. You can see on the photos on the screen, and we served over 100 bicycles this week. Thank you to the volunteer mechanics. Next slide, please. Finally, we have a few key community engagement opportunities coming up. On Wednesday, August 26th, we are hosting a rail grade separation community meeting for the Churchill, Meadow, and Charleston crossings. This is the large rail grade separation project. This will be from 6 to 8 p.m. at Mitchell Park Community Center. And the following evening, Thursday, August 27th, we are hosting a South Palo Alto connectivity workshop regarding the El Dorado Rail Bike and Ped undercrossing. This is from 6 to 7:30 at Rinconada Library. I also want to note that staff is currently submitting an OBAG grant to help fund the future connectivity projects that I just mentioned. And lastly, Caltrans has an active public survey for the El Camino Real Comprehensive Multimodal Corridor Plan, and they're asking folks to submit a survey before the September 16th deadline, and the link is on the slide. That concludes my updates. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
And through the chair, before we get to questions, we do have some clarification from Mr. Yang.
Thank you. Commissioner G, we actually will need to know the general relationship between you and the individuals who are there with you.
Oh, it's my parents.
Thank you.
All right, now we can proceed. Thank you.
Okay, so are there any questions of staff from the commission? Looks like we've got, is it? Okay, thank you. I'm not sure that's not lined up. Commissioner Heckman and then Commissioner Templeton.
Thank you, Chair. This is a question for Mr. Arce. The third grant that you mentioned, which is I think $83,000 for bike lane along East Bay Shore north of Embarcadero. So I think that's in the area of a residential, a conversion of what's now office being converted to residential that recently came through Planning Commission, and I think has made it through council as well. My comment is actually sort of related to that, and it's something we daylighted when that project was before us, and that is, how will those kids, the kids that live in the 200 some odd, or maybe it's 168 units, how are they going to, what's their path to school? And I think, and we talked about it some, but many of them, if not most or all of them who bike, will take our older bike bridge, which is, crosses the freeway sort of between Embarcadero and Oregon. And I was wondering, are you familiar with that bike path, that bike bridge?
What we call Embarcadero crossing over 101 that
Yeah.
lands on, what is that on the other side? St. Francis,
Yes.
or St.
Yeah.
Francis.
By any chance, have you walked or biked across that? Because I'm
Yes.
going to talk about a couple of. So I'm very familiar with that because I probably use that 5 times a week, and there's a pinch point
Mhm,
on either end.
mhm.
On the bay side, it's sort of a almost 90-degree turn. When you're on the flats between the road and the end of the structure. And then on the St. Francis side, right when you get to the end, it's a 90-90. While people are, first of all, it's a narrow, by current standards, it's a narrower bike bridge, but there's room for 2 people to ride past each other, even though there's a sign that says, please walk your bike. That's very seldom the case. But when you get to those pinch points, you lose visibility. And I think that there's a high likelihood that we'll have kids running into each other when the kids start to use that. And I think that there is available land to make some minor modifications to those 2 pinch points. One, I think, is Caltrans land along Oregon Expressway, which is at the St. Francis end, where you to sort of straighten it out or at least enhance the visibility. And then on the other side, I think that's private property of the adjacent office building, but I think like only 20 square feet or something of their land would be needed to widen this out so that people can see each other coming from the 2 directions. So it's going to be a while before those housing units rise, and there's also a prospect we're going to see more housing units on that side that would utilize this. So I just wanted to put this on the transportation's radar to take a look at that and think about what safety improvements might be beneficial for those 2 points at either end. Thanks.
Thank you for those comments. I'm very familiar with those pinch points and the what maybe we could refer to simply as the dated crossing. I don't think we would build it in that way today. I guess my only other response would be that both the crossing and connections to that Embarcadero crossing all the way through the Renzel Trail on the bay side is in our projects in the bike and ped plan that was just adopted. So those are on our radar. We know that is a pinch point. And so, yeah, thank you for flagging that, especially in the context of more housing coming to that area.
All right. That's great to hear. Thank you.
Commissioner Templeton.
Thank you. On Monday, the chief transportation official said that there was a study going on within the department to improve the fidelity with which motions made pertaining to the transportation department by the PTC were represented to council. Can you tell us more about that, and should we be involved?
I am not aware of those conversations, and I don't want to speak on behalf of the director. So maybe
I think that's a fair answer, and I don't hold that against you at all. I was also surprised to hear that represented to council. So I just want to suggest, as a takeaway from tonight's meeting, perhaps we can find out whether that process is already underway or whether this is another misrepresentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Templeton. I've got a question. Mr. Arce, were you able to find out if there were additional payback collision reports for us?
short answer is yes, and hopefully by tonight you have an email in your inbox. We were able to dig up March through June, which should bring you up to date. So thank you for flagging that, and the commission should have those reports tonight.
Great, thank you. All right, seeing no lights, then we're going to move onto our first action item for tonight, which is a public hearing, quasi judicial, for 332 Forest Avenue. It's a recommendation to forward a planned home zone application to the Architectural Review Board to redevelop the site with an 8-story, 82-unit multifamily residential development. So first of all, because this is quasi judicial, I wanted to just go down the line and see if we have any disclosures. So perhaps we could start with Commissioner Aiken.
No disclosures.
No disclosures.
No disclosures.
No disclosures for me.
No disclosures.
Okay, great.
So
Oh, Commissioner, sorry, there's no person sitting there. I need to put his face there on a monitor for me. Commissioner G or Vice Chair G.
no disclosures.
Okay, thank you. Let's start with the staff report.
All right, well, good evening. Bear with me while presentation loads. Well, here we are in August, so let's take a trip to 332 Forest Avenue. As mentioned, this is a rezoning project. I wanted to provide some context since we don't often see projects in the south of the forest area, so I included a map of that. So highlighted is the project site. And to further orient ourselves here, the project site is highlighted there. So it's near downtown. There are some other nearby housing projects as noted by the numbers on the screen and detailed in the staff report, those being along Forest Avenue and the one addressed at Bryant Street, 85 units ranging down to 17 units in the surrounding vicinity. So a little bit about the project itself. Currently, there is a 2-story residential building on the project site, as well as a vacant parcel in the rear. So this would involve the demolition of that 16 residential units in that 2-story building, and it would be proposing an 8-story high at 85 feet tall building, including that composition mix of those 82 units with 1-bedroom units up to 30, 2 bedrooms up to 41, and 3 bedrooms up to 11. 16% of those would be provided at below market rate, but it is noted, and we'll get into that in some further slides, that the applicant is requesting that those be provided off-site. So I have some further slides on that to guide the discussion for tonight. As for parking, we're looking at 113 parking spaces, 82 of which would be EV, and that is ranging at 3 levels of parking, 1 below grade and 2 at grade, including 82 long-term bike spaces and some short-term up to 10 spaces. This also involves a ministerial process with a certificate of compliance for that boundary line adjustment to allow for that 2nd-story common space area that is detailed in the plans that encroaches on the adjacent parcel under the same ownership. And the application also involves some tree removals as well.
So how did we get here? Back in August at council, there was a pre-screening, and as detailed in that staff report, some of those recommendations or suggestions, if you will, from council on that initial pre-screening, those 10 or 11 pages of the planning set that was presented. Following that, there was a formal application submitted in March, and there's been 2 rounds of review. So we're on the second round, and we brought it forward to the Planning and Transportation Commission for an initial review. Planning and some other departments are still evaluating some of the aspects of the design, but the application is complete, and they've provided the basis of the information to move forward. As projected and following the PHC process, we're anticipating, barring, say, the recommendation tonight, in fall of this year, that it would go to the Architectural Review Board. There are a limit of 3 hearings for that. Following that, it would return back to the Planning and Transportation Commission and ultimately up to City Council for final decision. And just going through the plan set briefly here, here's a site plan of that, showing that ground level, if you will, with the ramp down to the lower level of parking, as well as the first floor, ground floor units and community area opening into that shared space. Moving on to floor 1, from that basement level, we have that community area and those units. Floor 2, with that second story of that community amenity space, if you will. Floor 3, and then floors 4 through 7 are the same floor plan, or composition, should I say. Then we have the 8th floor and the roof. Provided some elevations. Here is from Forest Avenue, the northern elevation. We have the western elevation. So this would be along that adjacent property on Bryant. And we have the southern elevation. And eastern elevation that would face the shared open space with the adjoining common ownership parcel. And I have 2 renderings here. The view from that shared open space. So to help guide tonight's discussion, wanted to pull out some key considerations from that staff report. So parking and services, this is within an area subject to, say, AB 2097 with those reduced parking standards. But as noted in the staff report, since it is a rezoning, there is some discretion as to what would be allowed for the project, and those parking being provided on the site is less than what would normally be required for the zoning. We have the PHC requirements also noted in the staff report with the transitional height due to an adjacent property with lower density residential use. 85 feet is being proposed where 50 feet would normally be required for our planned home zoning standards, as well as no daylight plane being provided. I do want to note that the plans do include some setbacks. So it is a 10-foot setback of the actual structure itself, and then up on the 3rd floor would be a further 10 feet setback. So effectively at the 3rd floor, it's 20 feet from the property line, but that's not meeting the daylight plane standards that are provided in the PHC zoning requirements. As for open space, it is being proposed to be shared with the adjacent property under the same ownership. I did want to note the common open space requirements here. So the 82 units that's being proposed, as well as the 40 units in that shared ownership parcel in that building that's existing, would be a total of 122 units. So if those were to be constructed, say, present day, the requirement would be 6,100 square feet of common open space. And as of right now, the plans indicate that there's 9,500 square feet being proposed. So it is a creative solution for a property that is adjacent to or owned by the same proximity. So this is meeting those standards, at least in our zoning code. As for housing and affordability, there are some relocation assistance for those existing 16 units and protections in our zoning code. And on to a little bit more of that discussion of those 16 offsite units. So this is a interesting proposal. I will say that the city has yet to see this being requested. So to kind of guide some of the discussion, and the applicant can provide a little bit more detail about this request. Staff prepared four items that perhaps could help give some direction, such as the location or the proximity of those selected offsite units to the project site itself, the year built date of either the structure that they're in or the date of a recent renovation of the said unit, the unit square footages in comparison to what's being provided on site, as well as the rental history, perhaps if they're being currently rented at rates that are comparable to the BMR standards. I do want to note that our zoning code does provide for some offsite units, but that would be for construction, not for existing units. So there is a provision in code to allow some offsite provisions, but it isn't seen for existing units. So with a PHC, it does open that up for council to consider. So also noted in the staff report, there is a SB 79, should I say, alternative. So I wanted to provide those data points here on the screen. So this would be a reduced scope project. It would be coming in at 65 feet versus the 85 feet, a total of 69 units versus those 82. And the BMR would be 9, and that would be required to be on site for SB 79 provisions versus the 16 that's being requested offsite, and parking would be 98 versus the 113. So just to note, this is a preliminary SB 330 application. There's been no formal application submitted for this. This is a recent state law that's moved forward. So we're just seeing the first batch of applications, and we just had the first round of, say, the 30-day review from the initial time that preliminary application was submitted. So very fresh, but wanted to provide it for the context of the hearing today, that there is an alternative. As for CEQA, the city is preparing an initial study checklist. So that's section 15183 for consistency with the comprehensive plan. And onto the recommendation. So staff recommends that the Planning Commission provide some initial comments and feedback and consider forwarding the proposed project to the Architecture Review Board for the development plan. And with that, I can entertain any questions, and the applicant does have a presentation as well.
So I wanted to ask my fellow commissioners, do you want to ask staff for questions right now, or do you want to wait to see if some of those questions are answered by the applicant before we do questions?
I would prefer to wait.
Okay, great. Great, let's do that. Okay, so could we hear from the applicant, please?
Great. Good evening, commissioners, staff. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Peter Giovanotto, and I'm here representing my family for this exciting downtown development. We're longtime Palo Alto residents and real estate business owners in this great city, and in fact have owned this particular property for over 25 years. To help our family navigate the entitlement process, we put together an experienced team with deep roots in Palo Alto. Next slide, please. Leading our building design is the legend. There we go. Leading our building design is the legendary architect and Palo Alto resident, Rob Steinberg of Steinberg Hart. We also have Jeff Smith of Saris Regis to help us navigate the process as our development advisor. Saris Regis has a long history in Palo Alto over their 30 years in business and have developed a well-earned reputation for working collaboratively to get great projects built. Next slide, please. Rob and Jeff will speak in more detail about the location and the building, but I wanted to highlight a few features. First, this is a project that provides 82 new residences in downtown Palo Alto. This project is 100% rental housing rather than a condo project or another office building. This building provides family-sized units and is located within walking or biking distances to Addison, Green, and Pali, along with great connectivity to University Avenue. The property is also located less than 1/2 mile from the downtown Caltrain station. Lastly, we've made a real effort to make the building sustainable and to keep traffic off the street by providing bicycle storage, EV-ready parking spaces, and even a full delivery area, all off-street and inside the building. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Rob Steinberg to speak more about the building context and design.
Mr. Tavera, could you just pause the clock for a second? So I forgot to mention for those who are listening online as well as those who are here, that if somebody has public comment, please make sure you fill out your comment cards because we will stop taking those comment cards about 5 minutes after the staff presentation. All right, go ahead, Mr. Steinberg.
Good evening. Nice to be with you, Rob Steinberg. This first image is an aerial view of our site. And as you can see, it is in the heart of downtown. In fact, it's on the next block. Unusual to find a site of this size in the downtown. Next, please. On this slide, Forest Avenue is running up and down on the screen. Gilman Street is running left to right and currently dead ends into a parking lot on our site. 3 of the 4 corners are occupied by residential buildings that range from about 60 to 80 feet in height. And our proposal tonight is to create on the 4th corner of the Gilman Forest intersection, the addition of a building that matches the size and character of the other 3 corners. Next, please. These are 2 photographs of the site context. The top one is a view looking from our site down Gilman towards Hamilton, and it shows the 2 buildings directly across the street, across Forest from our proposed building. And on the bottom, on the left, is the existing Casa Real, and our proposed site is where the 2-story buildings are on the right. Next, please. Our vision for the Forest site is an integrated collection of old and new buildings and gardens. There are 3 components to the proposal. A is the landmark 1920s Casa Real, an elegant, timeless structure that really sets the tone for our proposal. B is a new residential building. It's not a copy of Casa Real, but it's a cousin, it's a sibling of that building. And C is a significant open space that would be shared by the residents of both Casa Real and the new building. Next, please. So Casa Real is a classic example of Palo Alto's unique architectural heritage. The new building, which takes its cue from Casa Real, is a sustainable contemporary building that celebrates its moment in time. Utilizing a decorative vertical element, Casa Real breaks down the massing of the building. It highlights the entry, and it gives variety to how the building meets the sky. The sketches on the right illustrate how we're using the same sort of guiding principles for the new building by contrasting a vertical element to modulate the scale, to lead the visitor to the entry, and offer variety as the building meets the sky. Next, please. Now, sculpting of the mass of the building to transition to adjacent buildings is going to be fundamental in our success here. Fortunately, we are starting with a substantial green screen of redwood trees and other mature trees that in many cases are taller than the existing building or our proposed building. And we can certainly augment the landscape buffer, which I'll show you in a minute, to respond to the softening the relationship between the two buildings. On the left, there's a sketch that shows how we want to match the height of Casa Real with the new building to make a unified composition and to emphasize the sense of entry. On the right, transitioning the neighboring buildings, the mass will need to have a little finer grain detail. Next, please. Now, at our pre-screening with the council, they told us they felt that the height, or this is what we believe we heard, that the height and the density are appropriate on this site with these conditions. But they also requested that we set the upper floors back, additional setbacks from the property line, and that is exactly what we have done. Next, please. In addition to stepping the building back, we've retained 8 significant trees, 6 of them redwood trees and 2 oak trees. And to that, we're adding an additional 8 trees to supplement the screening provided by the existing mature trees. Next. So our proposal tonight before you both respects the past and it celebrates the future. We hope you will support the addition of significant new housing in the downtown. And I'm going to turn this over to Jeff to give a little bit more detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Again, Jeff Smith with Saris Regis, and thank you for the opportunity tonight. As a builder of homes for over 30 years in the Bay Area, we've kind of prided ourselves in infill development, and there is no better space, if you can go to the next, or this slide is a good one, than the Forest Common location, providing housing that is transit oriented, it's walkable, it's bikeable, and it has a wide a range of amenities right in the heart of the downtown. Next slide. As mentioned by staff, we've made 2 full rounds of submittals with the city and working on all sorts of comments, but I wanted to point out a couple operational points of the design and it may pique your interest. The first thing is how important bikes are in Palo Alto. And so although it's a tight downtown site and it's not a lot of space, we provided a room that can store the 82 bikes in a very secure location, as well as in most of our developments, we have a really nice bike shop that provides opportunities for people to actually repair their bikes and gather and the like. Next slide. This is the first floor of the building that you saw earlier, and we wanted to point out a few things, as mentioned, that are interior to the site and not to the exterior. And the first thing is the green boxes. The first one on the left is our trash staging room. So we understand that we've got a tight frontage, it's 100 feet wide. We have to respect the fact that this is an operation that has to go on, weekly, and we've got a place working out with the trash providers that they will actually go into our trash room on pickup day, wheel out the dumpsters, and then we'll wheel them right back in. So nothing stored at the street. The second green box is actually a pretty neat feature. Right before our private and kind of security gate, we have a space for multiple purposes. Number 1, for deliveries. Number 2, for drop-offs and pickups. And then number 3, it's very close to our elevators and stairwells for move-ins. And so this is unique for a building of this size and again of this density. But again, I think we heard it loud and clear that we just don't have the frontage for all that activity and really taking cars out of that street frontage. Couple other notes, in purple is the amenity space as noted. We're going to have spaces like a co-working space. We're going to have fitness and yoga, a club room, a lobby. These are spaces that take cars off the roads. So co-working is one that I will highlight because again, that is one of our most popular amenities, and you will see it in not only every building we build, probably every proposal that's being put before you, and they really do work, and it truly is a testament to, even though this is a downtown site with transit, it even takes that further, to take cars off the roads. And then the last thing I'll point out is at the front in kind of a pink color is townhome units that will actually screen our garage. So these are 2-story units, so you will not see that there is a 2-story parking garage from the street elevation. Next slide. And finally, we're making a serious investment into parking. So we have 3 levels of parking. On the left is our first floor with unit screening. The second middle slide is a second floor ramp up to additional parking. This is all within a concrete, fully screened and sprinklered garage. And then finally, the last slide on the right is a fully underground parking garage. This provides 113 spaces, including 82 EV ready, and it meets or exceeds every proposal that we've seen recently in Palo Alto as far as a parking per unit count. So we're making a big investment. We know it's important to the property. Next slide. So it is no mystery or no secret that the state's put a big mandate on every city, including Palo Alto, for the housing crisis. And so we outlined that the city's current housing element has 346 potential housing units in the downtown. And if you really look at it, they're onesie, twosies, small buildings, tight sites, very challenging. And as it's pointed out, this property is unique, almost an acre in size because of the sharing facilities that with one fell swoop, 82 units could provide almost a quarter of the housing element identified in the city's program. Next slide. So we're going to end with many of the community benefits, and I'll kind of just read through these. The first one is it really transforms this unique and very underutilized site. If you've ever walked it, you'll see the big dirt patch in the back, and obviously this great, wonderful garden that can be shared. It's right downtown. It provides 82 family-friendly homes that are full rent. As detailed, we're right now just putting together the fine points of an offsite below market rate program for consideration. Tonight, we really asked for your input, and it's actually, I wanted to correct one item. It is our understanding that the ordinance does envision and allow rehab of units, because it's very specifically calls out rehab, and it even mentions an investment that you should be willing to make to rehab those units. So again, we'll work with city staff. Our idea, get comments tonight, come back to you. We want to exceed that 20%. That is our goal, and that's how we'd like to get this done. It's a 100% housing project. It really addresses that longstanding jobs to housing imbalance. Obviously, I've pointed out the offsite dedications of these spaces in our building that takes cars off the road, including parking, bike parking, and deliveries. It supports a more vibrant downtown, so we're going to bring new residents to all the businesses. And then finally, it really demonstrates a meaningful transit-oriented development right in the heart of downtown. Next slide. So with that, even gave you a little time to spare. We're obviously here, and we know this is an initial step. We're working not only with you here at the Planning and Transportation Committee. We know we'll be here for multiple meetings. We've got the ARB process to work out. We know we'll be back to City Council and obviously city staff, but we ask for, again, your input tonight so that we can craft our next presentation to all of those boards. And as the city pointed out, we also are starting our intensive CEQA work that will address many of the concerns that we heard in the comments. So again, we're here to answer questions. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, now is the time for clarifying questions for staff and for the applicant. Just to remind us all, the process that we use is that after this, then we'll take public comment. And after that, if we would like to, we can ask the applicant more questions, but then we'll close the public comment. So this is, one of your chances before we close public comment to ask the applicant questions. All right, Commissioner Aiken.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start with questions for the applicant. So I gather part of the plan is to demolish the existing parking garage at Casa Real. Do we know how many of those spaces are in use today?
Well, yeah, it's my understanding it's 12 spaces.
And will the Casa Real residents have access to the Forest Commons garage?
Yes, that is our intent.
And do the computations of parking spaces per unit take that into account?
Yes. That's, I think at the current count, we're at about 1.43 spaces per unit. I think even if you take out the 12 that we're going to replace, we're still above the 1.2.
Okay, so it's just for those 12, not adjusted for the entire number of units at Casa Real.
That's right.
Okay. Second question is,
Can I just ask, so
please.
when you say that there's however many parking spaces that are proposed, 113, so you're saying it's 113 plus 12 or just 113?
113 total. And so if you,
So it's a net of
if you-
101.
that's correct.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks for the clarification there. This is a somewhat awkward question, but I think someone needs to ask it so that we can all hear. Why proceed with two applications, one PHC and one SB 79 compatible?
Sure. Good question. I thought maybe that'd be one of the final questions, but we can just go right to it. We were advised by many that there was a window of opportunity in Palo Alto to, in effect, submit for SB 79. We would have been foolish not to. I mean, just our intent is to take the current proposal through the process of PhD. But if you look at the investment and the time and the efforts that are made, there is another proposal there for much less units. It's less height. It cuts the affordability in half. That could be viable. And so if we run into too many issues, whether it's this commission, an ARB commission, even the city council, where there's a problem, we have an option here, and we're fully willing to do that. Again, we think it would be a missed opportunity, but we have to have in our back pocket as an insurance policy, because again, this is kind of a once in a lifetime, a once in a generation's opportunity to redevelop this property. Casa Real was 100 years ago. This building will be here, whether it's 65 feet or 85 feet, for 100 years, and it's going to be a beautiful building no matter what. But we want to go here and get the input and get the feedback, and also win your approval. But if one, for one reason or another, that doesn't look in the cards, then we can take the SB 79 option. And again, we think it's not the best outcome, but it is one possible option.
Thank you. Yeah, since we don't have a formal application, it's really hard to talk about that, but I wanted to get the context into place. I think for my remaining two clarifying questions, I'll address those to Mr. Switzer. Do we know how much total common open space is on the parcels today, and how much would exist if the current proposal moves forward?
Let's see. I know that the plans have what's being proposed. I don't believe that they have the current values. I can double check that to see, but it would be an easy calculation to make.
Yeah, it's another interesting decision point for us. We may meet the standards that exist today, but if we're actually reducing the total amount of common open space for the people who live in Casa Real now and who would live in Forest Commons in the future, it's an interesting policy decision that we might cut back on open space that already exists.
If I could, if the chair would let me provide a little input there.
Do you have the numbers that we're looking for?
I don't have the exact numbers, but what I will tell you is one thing also, just in your consideration, is that the remainder garden that is not in the calculations is more than double the size of the calculations we're talking. So I think, and we'll get these numbers and come right from staff, but I think it's double of the requirement. Number one. Number two is, remember, our proposal is this shared concept of the two buildings in one campus, one community. So those recreational spaces will also be available, just like the parking and all the other things. So that's additional open space, common space that can be used for Casa Real.
Thank you.
Understood. Related to that, Mr. Switzer, I don't know if this is a this is something that's been done in the past, whether we used an adjacent or a different parcel to provide common open space. Do we have a sense of what regulations would apply for that? That is, for example, would you have to use an adjacent parcel? Are there like ADA accessibility requirements that might come into play? Do we know what might affect this sort of decision?
Sure. So I definitely think it's, well, great that the applicant owns both parcels. But a lot of that would be fleshed out, say, through a dedication or an easement for the use, the shared use between the two parcels. But as for any provisions, say for ADA or accessibility, that would be, through the development review of any of the proposed work, say the regrading or the landscaping, what have you. So those would be considered as the project moves forward. So.
Yeah, I'm just interested in if we establish a precedent here, just how much of a precedent do we establish?
To my knowledge, I can't think of a property where we've had this unique situation, but my knowledge is not exhaustive of the city. So.
But there are other projects where you have shared parking agreements and other types of easements or agreements between one parcel and another to ensure that there is full provision of the requirements for both properties.
Thank you, AD Armour. Last one for me. I was confused by the discussion of replacement for the existing units. I was unable to find current rental data online, but it appears from past data that at least some of those qualify as naturally affordable. So what is there any relevant policy that affects whether we would request or require replacement units somewhere offsite?
I can start to take this question and then I'll look to Attorney Yang to fill in my absence of knowledge here. But as for the affordability requirements, I mean, our local ordinance does have provisions for relocation as well as if there's, say, a just cause eviction or the redevelopment of the site. So there are protections in place there. As for the Housing Crisis Act of 2019, that does provide for some standards as well as replacement for some units if they are at rates affordable or equivalent to affordable. So, and if there's any further comment from.
Yeah. So as Mr. Switzer mentioned, the Housing Crisis Act does require some form of replacement for rental units that are currently occupied by lower income households. And so those are generally, that's not a separate requirement from, inclusionary obligations or on-site obligations through density bonus law. Generally, one unit can satisfy both the replacement unit and the other affordability requirements.
Okay, so in an extreme case, we have 16 units today. Our inclusionary requirement would be 16 units, but we might end up with net zero change in BMR units.
That's right, but there can be some nuance there. For example, if one of the existing units is occupied by a very low income household, then it would need to be, it's possible it would need to be replaced at that level. And so while the number of units might change, there might be an impact on the depth of affordability.
Okay, I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Aiken. Next, we've got Commissioner James.
Well, those were two of my questions. I'm glad to get those answers. I also just wanted to ask about, I know this is not SB 79 proposal, but I'd like to know whether SB 79 requires compliance with Palo Alto Objective Design design standards generally and specifically daylight plane?
So SB 79 would have its own specific subset of standards. So those are effectively the density on the site. We have height limits as well as floor area as well. So beyond those, a project that meets kind of that subset of requirements would effectively be able to advance forward. To the extent possible, I mean, the city would, be working with applicants to implement best planning practices, but what would be enforceable, say legally enforceable through that new legislation, that would be kind of the parameters looking at.
And I can jump in and add that the way that Senate Bill 79 works is it basically says that the city can't have any development standards that preclude them from having the height, density, and floor area that are laid out in that law. And so we would, to the best of our ability, enforce the objective standards. But if there was something that would, like daylight plane may, prevent them from being able to do the height that is allowed under that state law, then we would need to allow the project to move forward per that requirement.
Thank you.
Do we have anybody else who has clarifying questions right now or other questions for the applicant? Okay, then I'm going to go ahead with some of mine. So this is for staff. Was council alerted to the fact that this project, during the pre-screen, was council alerted to the fact that this project is not compliant with PC regulations?
If you're referring to the daylight plane,
Daylight plane, height?
yes, that was detailed in the previous staff report at that August meeting with council.
Okay, then my question to the applicant is, can you, I thought I heard something about adjustments made as a result of the feedback that council gave regarding daylight plane. Could you please talk to us a little bit about that?
Yes. So on the west side of the building, I'm going to call it the west, with our neighbors to the Bryant condominium project.
So I've because of the orientation of Palo Alto streets, can we put up the
site plan?
The site plan or the.
Sure. If you could bear with me. And while they're pulling it up, so we meet the setback. The required setback is 10 feet on the side yard. And the original proposal met that setback. The comments we got back, and obviously we heard the neighbors, and we'll talk about that later as well. We were asked, can you work on that one side specifically? Because that's who came to the meeting, and see if you could potentially step back that one side. And so if we can get the site plan up, we can, I can show you. Yeah, so if north-south is forest, and where you see the red lines is our neighbor to, I'm going to call it the west, but that's the Bryant condominiums. That's on the upper side. That's where you see our building had some undulations, but it really was built to that 10-foot setback, the setback that was required. What we did is we pushed back the entire middle of our building with some pretty unique floor plans to create a bigger buffer. And you can kind of see that in one of the elevations Stephen showed as well. So, and as Rob Steinberg, mentioned, that was an architectural item. It, has to do with how the building and units lay out, but we were able to give some relief, and that combined with the fact that we, worked with the arborist to make sure that we could save the trees that are documented to be saved, and then adding additional trees. That's the second part is can you do more screening for the view of that side of the project and the neighbor's request.
So was anything done to the right side of the building? Right, so at the bottom.
In the back.
Yes, in the back, because we are now getting a lot of public comment from the backyard neighbors.
From the folks on the other side.
Correct. I think yeah, right.
I don't think we did, but we can study that.
Okay. Thank you. Then my next question is for staff. Do we know the square footage of the lot line adjustment? Or basically, we're taking land from the Casa Real parcel and appending it to this parcel. Do we know the square footage of that?
Yes, so the site area is of those two existing parcels around 5,000 square feet. And after the adjustment, it would be 31,398. So that would be the total.
6,000. So you're saying that it's around 6,500 square feet?
Thereabouts.
Okay, thank you. And then also for staff, could you refresh our memories as to the relocation assistance that is provided to current residents?
Yes, let me pull up that code section to provide those exact amounts. And good thing I had this already bookmarked, so saved a little searching. For one bedroom units, that would be $9,000. And then two bedroom units, that would be 13,000.
One-time payment.
Yes.
Okay. Let me just quickly check and then, well, actually, why don't I just yield to Commissioner G, who looks like he's got, Vice Chair G, who looks like he's got some clarifying questions.
For staff about the Casa Real, is it current, since we're moving some part of the land over potentially to 332 Forest, is, for example, the FAR or density or anything else, is the current Casa Real structure already legally compliant with its requirements? And if we remove some of the land, is it possibly going to be non-complying?
Great question. As for those exact values, I'd have to do a little bit of math here, but the property is quite large. I mean, albeit the building is large as well, but through the initial review that was done on those first two rounds of the plans, it didn't reveal that there would be any non-conformance with the lot line adjustment.
So the reason I ask is because on packet page, whichever one has the diagram, it shows that Casa Real, it's on packet page 16, shows Casa Real as RM40. And I suspect that, well, the building is larger than what we would normally allow in RM40. And so I'm wondering if, for example, we have FAR requirements or other requirements that implicate or that are important for RM40 that we may suddenly become non-compliant with if we were to move some of the land. Is that a possibility? I see Ms. Armour has some comments.
Yeah, I was going to say that I think that's something that we can look into to confirm. It is something that was checked initially, but given that question, I think we can.
Yeah, we can circle back to this while you guys crunch the numbers. And then my next question is for Mr. Yang. I had a question about the findings of approval on packet page 17. So it says, for example, finding A, the site is so situated and the use or uses proposed for the site are of such characteristics that the application of general districts or combining districts will not provide sufficient flexibility, etc. What is a general or combining district in this case?
So a combined general district is, for example, RM40 or CD or just any of the zone districts that are the kind of the base underlying districts in our code. And then a combining district would be like the ground floor or the retail combining districts that apply on to set special requirements for certain
Thank you.
sites.
So one of the questions I have is, for example, now that we have a half-mile circle for SB 79, would that be considered a general district, right? Because, for example, with the SB 79 rule in place, we do see that projects that, for example, are RM40 wouldn't be able to support, but now are able to support via SB 79.
Right. So we do now have basically an SB 79 combining district that was created by the council, and it applies to this site. But it would not support this project as proposed.
Yes, I understand. It would support the SB 79 version probably, right? It would not support the PHZ version that we have right now.
That's right. It also would not support the SB 79 version that's been detailed, partially in the staff report, because that TOD combining district actually sets the FAR and density at approximately half what is allowed under kind of vanilla SB 79. So
I see.
Roughly 1.75 FAR, for example.
Okay, I see. Thank you. And then I had a question for staff, probably Stephen, about the loading zone. I see that on the plans provided during the applicant presentation that there is like a delivery area, but is that considered a loading zone by our standards?
Yes, so there would be that, and then also on the plans, it's provided a white curb that would be out in, say, the public right of way that would also constitute, say, ride share pickup or that. So yes, the plans do show that there would be a loading space, drop off, if you will, within the garage.
Okay, but that would comply with our loading space requirement for residential structures with 50 or more dwelling units, the space that they've provided inside?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then I had a question for the applicant. So you had talked about how transition is important for this area, but I guess the project you've provided does not satisfy the daylight plane requirements. And so can you talk a little bit more about why you decided to make that decision?
Sure. The building that we've proposed is very similar to Casa Real. In fact, it's got a lot more detail and a lot more ins and outs. This site is so narrow, it's got a single corridor supported with housing on either side. If you can picture what a daylight plane would do to a site that's that narrow, again, this is a small downtown site in general compared to the bigger projects you're seeing coming through your city, you would be wiping out a substantial amount of housing. So the answer is it doesn't work financially. And so that's another reason we've got the SB 79 application option, because if we're forced to provide daylight planing, step back buildings, lose a lot of units, there's a much easier path for us. And I do want to just clarify a couple things with SB 79. Remember, it likely would not require any of that daylight planing. It would be a much less discretionary process using other state housing laws as well, and much less public input. And then one other just clarifying, I think, question that you had, Commissioner G, is that we submitted our SB 79 application before the city's ordinance went into effect. So I just want to make sure we're under the state's SB 79 requirements, and just.
Commissioner G might be frozen. So I'm going to ask a question right now. So this is of the applicant. So what is the reason for the request for offsite EMR units? Because that's not something standard at all.
It's almost as unique as having two properties next to each other that have this garden that I think if you add up the garden alone, just for a big number, it's almost 20,000 square feet, because we talked about the 6,000 that we're carving up for the lot line. There's like 15,000 left. When we walked back there, we discovered this is a unique property. In the same manner, the Giovanottos are a unique family who own a lot of property in Palo Alto. And when we started to explore this potential to deliver more market rate housing on the site and more affordable housing earlier, because we could deliver those rehab units in a matter of about a third of the time. So even after entitlements, a brand new project is going to take a minimum of 3 years or more to deliver new homes. We could deliver a project, if it was so approved, for offsite units in under a year. And so we thought this is something that is in the ordinance. It's for consideration. Ultimately, it goes through not only your commission, but also the city council. And if it's something that's very attractive, and by the way, we don't have the details, but it will be more than 16 units, okay? And so we want to make it attractive in that manner. And there was just so many things that were lining up. Why not kind of have a win-win? And kind of back to my prior statement, there's one shot to build this building. It's going to be there for a long time. And why not do the most we can in providing housing? And that's kind of where we landed.
Right, we can go back to Commissioner G now that, or Vice Chair G now that he's returned, unfrozen.
Yep, sorry for that. Do you have a sense of how much you're violating the daylight plane? So, for example, the daylight plane may require something like, let's say, 45 degrees, and your building is 85 degrees. It's like 46 degrees. Do you have a general sense of how much difference you're seeing here?
I'll jump in on that. So it's not indicated on the plans, but that would be if we go over to the zoning, and I'll read the code here for those items. So that would be, let's see here. Daylight plane being measured at a height of 10 feet at the applicable side or rear sight lines and increasing at a slope of 3 feet for every 6 feet of distance until intersecting with the height limit otherwise established by the PC district. So that would effectively wedding cake the property, and that would, you know, render the stories above, say the second story further inward, and then
Yes, I understand how the daylight plane works. For also, I thought that because this is a residential project, that it would be 45 degrees.
So this does have special requirements. So those are found in the municipal code 1838-150 for those special requirements for PCs.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Right, but wouldn't it mirror the district next to it? So the parcel next to it.
Right. So it's either the special requirements or any of the mirroring of the district, whichever is more restrictive.
And the 3/6 is there's a property that's 3/6 that's abutting this property.
The special requirements would be more restrictive in this case.
That isn't consistent with what we've learned on prior projects. I thought that we just mirrored the most restrictive on a particular side. So in other words, if RM40 or RM30 is 45 degrees, then we would mirror that. There's no less restrictive abutting zone.
Or reading through the actual wording of the code here as we're looking at it, and it does say that if a residential daylight plane, as shown in the section, is selected, the setback regulations are the same as that adjoining residential plane shall be imposed. So I think that is what you're saying there. Mr. Yang, I don't know if you've got any clarification in terms of the understanding of how those two different sets interplay, sets of rules.
Sorry, yeah, I'm not familiar with the specific adjoining parcels, but it is the daylight plane of the adjacent residential zone. So if it does change depending on which side you are looking at.
Sure. I guess my main question is how much does it not comply? So we're saying in the table on packet page 18 that it does not comply. Do we have a sense of how much it doesn't comply?
At this point, as was stated, we don't have diagrams to show that. And it's clear that that is something that would be helpful as this project moves forward. So as we go to the Architectural Review Board and then return to the Planning Transportation Commission, we can ask the applicant to provide a diagram that would show where those daylight planes would be and how it intersects with the proposed building.
Okay, thank you. And then I had a question for staff. Since this project is in the SOFA area, are there any particular guidelines that we're supposed to? I mean, I see that we have objective standards set for next meeting, but are there any additional requirements that we need to follow because we're in the SOFA area?
So as noted in the staff report, let's see here, packet page 11, detailing kind of those SOFA policies, if you will. In broad strokes, SOFA was, to have some residential transition between lower density residential uses versus the downtown. And with this being on the very edge, literally south of the Forest Street, of that boundary, it's located in an area that the plan identified as having higher densities, residential densities, closer to the downtown uses. So for complying with the general policies of the plan, that would satisfy that.
Okay,
As
that's all I
for-
needed. Yeah, I wasn't sure if there's anything more specific than on the page, but if there's not, that's great. Thank you. And that ends my questions.
Thank you, Vice Chair G. I don't see any other lights, so with that, we're going to move to public comment. Mr. Tavera, how many public commenters do we have?
Yeah, through the chair, I received 7 individual speakers, and there is one group representing 16 people. I also did want to mention that after the 5 minutes of staff presentation, we did get 2 requests to speak, and want to know if you wanted to allow them or not.
How soon after?
One was just now, and then one was about 5 minutes ago.
Okay, that's too long, I think. So what I'm going to do is say 2 minutes per speaker, and then we'll do the 10 minutes for the group.
Okay. Then with that being said, I will invite Doran N, speaking on behalf of 16.
Give my friend just a second. Good evening, Chair Chang and the members of the Planning and the Transportation Commission. My name is Doron Neumann. My wife and I have lived in 707 Bryan Street for more than 22 years, immediately next to the proposed project. I'm speaking tonight with the support of many residents of 707 Bryan Street and neighbors from the surrounding community. Thank you for everyone who come here tonight and join remotely. Their presence show how much this project matters to the people who will live in with its consequences. I support adding housing to Palo Alto, but housing should be responsible, lawful, and appropriate for the site and the surrounding neighbors. Many of us have already submitted detailed written comments. Those comments are in the record and address zoning, Casa Real, historic preservation, lot line changes, heights, daylight, trees, environmental review, affordable housing, public benefit, privacy, and other legal and planning issues. I will not repeat those in details tonight, but I respectfully ask the Commission and staff to answer those substantive questions before this project advances. Tonight, I want to highlight a few of our concerns. First, scale. Can we go to number 12? The staff report identified an over 85-foot building when the underlying RM40 height stands is 40 feet. More important than number, look at this picture. Look at 707 Bryan Street, proposed building and the proposed building behind it. If you look from the library, this is what you're going to see. We go to number 13, please. Now look at Exhibit 13 and the relationship to the Weatherly. There's a dramatic change in scale. If you look from Heritage Park, this is what you're going to see. It affects height, mass, daylight, privacy, setback, and transition to the existing neighborhood. The staff report itself identify daylight plan and step back issues. I understand PHC provides flexibility, but flexibility should not mean that protection for surrounding residents simply disappear. That brings me to the legal compliance. Our written comments raise a serious issue about which laws, ordinance, standards, and required funding apply. For example, the planned community regulation contain height provision that appears relevant here, while the project proposed over 85 feet. I'm not asking you to accept our legal interpretation tonight. I'm asking the city to answer those questions clearly. What legal authority permits these deviations? What findings are required, and are those findings supported? Please resolve these questions before advancing the project, not afterward. Second, the Casa Real. Please look briefly at Exhibit 3 and 4, please. The plan shows significant lot line changes involving Casa Real. Our analysis indicates approximately 6,300 square feet would shift from Casa Real into the proposed project. And if you are wrong, please correct us. But if you are right, the consequences need to be understood. What does the change do to Casa Real and its existing condition? Casa Real is a Category 4 historic resource, and the historic evaluation is still being prepared. If changing Casa Real parcel is necessary to make this project possible, the legal planning and historic consequences should be resolved first. Third, tree and environmental review. Please look at Exhibit 11. There are mature trees along the property line, including large redwood, coast redwood immediately next to 707 Bryant. Our review raises serious concern about the effect of the excavation and construction of this tree. I'm not asking you to accept our calculation as established fact. I'm asking you to independent verify them. Will those trees survive? Will they remain healthy and safe? Those questions should be answered before the project moves forward. Fourth, public benefits. This project asks for substantial zoning flexibility. FAR goes from 1:1 to 3.36 to 1. Height goes from 40 feet to over 85 feet. So what is substantial public benefit in return? The staff report said that the applicant originally proposed on-site below market rate housing and now proposed 16 existing off-site deed-restricted units with important details still unresolved. What new affordability is being created? What is the public receiving in exchange for these substantial deviations? What should be clear before flexibility is granted? And finally, there are impacts to the people who already live there. Privacy is a major issue. The building of this magnitude, this close to existing residents, fundamentally change how people can live in their home. People should be able to open their curtains, be on the balconies, and live with reasonable level of privacy. There's also concern about property value and retirement security. I cannot tell you exactly what the project will do to property value, but I'm not claiming that I can. But it's reasonable for residents to be concerned that losing privacy, daylight, natural light, openness, and neighborhood character should adversely affect both the livability and value of their homes. For some elderly residents, those homes represent decades of work, an important part of their retirement security. Fixing existing residents should not become the afterthought of planning for future residents. I want to show you 17. Can you look at 17, please? Start 17. This is the picture from my balcony. Now, if you go to 18, This illustrates that based on the developer plan, what proposal could be placed directly in front of our home. Please look at this for a moment. If this was your home, imagine if you worked for decades to secure this home for your retirement, would you want legal, environmental planning, safety, privacy, and quality of life question answered before this project move forward? We do. We're not asking you to prevent development of the lot. Housing can be built there, but it should be the right project for the site. It should be appropriate scale. It should be respect privacy and daylight. It should protect mature trees and reasonable possible. It should respect Casa Real and its storage setting. It should provide a genuine public benefit and should comply with the laws, ordinance, and require finding that apply. The goal should not be the large building that can be the largest building that possible can be approved. The goal should be the right building for this site and this neighborhood. Please get the answer first, then determine what reasonable development belong there. We support housing. We are asking for responsible and lawful housing that does not unnecessarily reduce the quality of life of the people who already call this neighborhood home. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is KJC, followed by Fred K.
My name is KJ Chang, and I am an owner of 315 Homer. I am against the proposed 10-foot setback for the rear and side property lines. Please do not allow the developers to cover almost all of the properties of 332 and 350 Forest to the detriment of neighbors on the side and to the rear. The notable loss of daylight and mature trees along the property line are unacceptable. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Fred K, followed by Utsav G.
My name is Fred Kohler, and I live at 315 Homer, which was omitted from the staff report, even though we abut the rear property line of the proposal for 332 Forest. I agree with the comments of Mr. Neumann tonight, and I also agree that 332 and 350 Forest are excellent sites for more housing. But I don't think that maximizing the lot coverage at that site to add 66 net units to the detriment of almost 50 units adjoining it is good policy. SB 79 will provide opportunities for many more housing sites than were previously identified. So the maximum number of units does not have to be jammed onto this one piece of property. And there were 9 applications submitted during the 2-week window in July. So I think that shows that there's a lot of interest in redeveloping properties at a smaller scale. The 82 units would be roughly double the density of the neighboring properties. So, we expect more density, with all the changes in housing policy, but to double the density and, with a 10-foot setback line, it really damages the daylight plane. And another factor is the first 2 floors of this proposal are garages, which are not solid walls. They're proposed as having mesh and screens, which will allow noise and light and smoke pollution to with a close proximity.
Thank you. This concludes your time.
Okay, thank you.
Our next speaker is Utsav G, followed by Rebecca N.
Good evening, Chair Chang and Commissioners. I am Usav Gupta, speaking on behalf of the University South and Professorville Neighborhood Association. I also serve on our Utilities Advisory Commission, but I'm not speaking in that capacity tonight. Our association took part in the planning work that created the South of Forest Area District, and we thank staff for the work on this complicated application. We ask you to take the alternative action that staff has offered you on page 8 of your packet. Please continue this item to another date, returning it here before it goes to the Architectural Review Board. There are simply just too many open questions about this application, too many unique questions that need to be answered, and a precedence that could possibly be set, including the lot line. 26 years ago, the city adopted the South of Forest Area Plan. It is the comprehensive designation for this property. It designates the site RM40. That's 40 feet with floor area matching the size of the lot. What is proposed here is an 85-foot building with more than 3 times that floor area beside a 4-story neighbor built to the plan's limits. Density is welcomed under the SOFA plan, but that plan had a beautiful bargain in that the density was brought in gradually into the city in a way that was very natural and residential focused. This proposal is anything but. And before you recommend this plan, Chapter 18.38 does require certain findings, public benefits that are not otherwise attainable, and compatibility with uses beside it. And those special requirements do cap height, and we do not believe those findings can be made tonight. We have submitted a detailed letter that raises 8 open issues. We think those issues should be resolved before this application can move forward. Thank you again for your time and for your service on the commission.
Our next speaker is Rebecca N., followed by Jeff L.
Oh, hello. Thank you so much for your time tonight. I feel I'm here to support my fellow residents. I feel really bad for folks who are going to look out their windows and they're going to see like a parking structure and it's going to have exhaust and it's just not going to be a very pleasant experience for them. They're going to lose their light. And it's something that they had no control over. I really urge the commission to take these and take the feedback today and maybe spend a little more time looking at these questions that were brought in by some of these other residents earlier. And also, I just don't think that the neighboring building looks like the proposed building. I know that there's some like abstract kind of viewpoint, somehow it matches it symbolically, but it really doesn't look like it at all. Like it really looks like some kind of modern-y building that doesn't match the neighborhood. And the building that they're claiming looks like it is like very different in just the quality of the build and the beauty and the detail in it. And I don't think that what they're saying is correct. And also, I don't agree with the idea that having a yoga room or club room is going to take cars off the street. Like, I think people have to go to Costco, they have soccer things for their kids. And I don't know, I just don't think that is a valid statement as well. And I think having more housing is great. I just think it should have more input from the locals and the residents and try to keep it in character with what's already there. Thank you so much for your time and thank you for your service.
Our next speaker is Jeff L., followed by Zoom user.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jeff Levinsky, and I particularly want to call your attention to the lot line adjustment, which was not discussed in the staff report, just a phrase about it. The math is really easy. There's 40 units at Casa Real. The site is smaller than an acre, so it is already out of compliance with the code. If you shrink that site by 6,000 plus square feet, it will be more out of compliance with the code. That is absolutely illegal. Same thing with the FAR for the site, and same thing for the FAR of the amount of residential use. This issue has come up before the Planning Commission, and at that time, staff said, no, we've analyzed things, and you do not get to move a lot line and increase compliance, non-compliance, or create non-compliance. And there's a really good reason for that. And just think about if you had 2 houses with backyards. Would we allow the person with one backyard to sell their backyard to the other house? And now that owner can build a bigger house. No, we would never allow that. And by the way, the second owner could then sell the backyards back to the first owner and they could build a bigger house. And this would happen all over Palo Alto. And that is the precedent that staff is asking you to approve tonight. It would make Palo Alto the laughing stock of the nation to have such a chaotic policy. So please, please, please ask that this come back with a good analysis of all that. I think that's the only way to make sense of this. And I would point out that the SB 79 proposal apparently has the same problem in it. So that's a fatal flaw in both of these proposals that have been made to you. Thank you very much. Bye.
Our next speaker is Zoom user. However, they did lower their hands. I'll give you an opportunity to raise your hand again if you'd like to speak. All right, then our next speaker is MK. Actually, they just lowered their hand as well. I'll give you an opportunity if that was a mistake. Oh, there you go. MK, you may now speak.
Hello. Hi. Hello.
We can hear you.
Can you hear us?
Yes, we can.
Yes, sorry. Okay. So, very quickly, I know the time is short. We are residents at 332. I mean, of course, we support all our neighbors in that from a landscape perspective and urbanism, the building that is being proposed is just out of context and is and doesn't bring anything to the charm of Palo Alto. But we are also resident currently in the building, so we're very concerned about the project. We know that by law we will have to have a couple of months maybe notice to leave, but we would like to have a better timeline so that we can plan our lives. We are families. We're 16 families who live currently in 332, and we need to plan and we need to know if the project is going to move forward or to give us any timeline. The notice of the project proposed was removed from the site. And yeah, this is our main concern, is that our life is going to depend on this visibility. Thank you. And thank you for giving us the floor to ask questions.
Thank you.
And to the chair, that concludes public comment.
Okay, wonderful. So at this point, the applicant has 3 minutes for rebuttal.
So this will be pretty quick. We just received the comments yesterday and even more today. So we haven't had time to go through everything that we've heard, but certainly many of the items that were made are being studied by the staff. We're in our second review of the project, including, there's an arborist report, obviously safety and the preservation of those trees are very important. There will be a peer review of that. We also are analyzing the historic Casa Real, and there's a report that'll go with that. The open space and lot line adjustment as well. So, but all this leads to just the steps in a normal process. So, I know I hear some of the neighbors saying you've got to answer everything before you move things forward. Well, part of this is CEQA, right? And so there's a very long and lengthy process here. I think staff mentioned they're just starting an initial study, and they're going to go through everything we've heard tonight and more. So I do have confidence that all the answers will be provided, and certainly there are even little nuggets here that are very easy. Like I mentioned, studying the back of the site. I mentioned I didn't mention it, but we heard the comment on the open garage, and we're already talking to our folks about closing that, right, and screening it and providing easy solutions to make that look good and not have air, noise, exhaust, all that stuff. We just in today, you saw one of our screens where we actually have already added some trees to that screen. So we're going to do what we can, and again, we still feel like this is a good proposal. City Council, the only reason they considered the PHZ was because of the proposal in this one-time opportunity, but it certainly was very clear that the reason we need PHZ is because of density. It's because of the daylight plane and because of the height. So we still think it's worth studying. And I guess I'll leave it with this, is that the brothers have been contacted in the past by at least one set of neighbors who they sat down with, I think twice. And we would open that opportunity again to sit down with the neighbors, either individually or collectively, and just talk about what is possible or what potentially is not possible, and knowing that we have a couple of ways we can go with this project. So thank you for the opportunity tonight.
Thank you. Commissioners, before I close the public hearing, does anybody have additional questions for the applicant? Commissioner James?
Yes. So I'm trying to work this out in my head. And I hear a lot of comparison of like what is proposed versus what is ideal. Unfortunately, that's a luxury that we, really, in my view, don't have. It's really, I think we are comparing, in my mind, the proposed project versus it is clear that you could do this with SB 79. And so those are the trade-offs that I'm trying to understand primarily. And I guess what I'm trying to understand is how much, you may not want to answer this, but how much wiggle room is there between you clearly like this PHZ process and this proposal better than SB 79, or you would just do SB 79. You can, I'm sure, understand why SB 79 would be more attractive to neighbors, for instance. And we're trying to balance the neighborhood and the residents' concerns with the city's overall concerns, right? So when it gets specific, in general, we all agree on that we need more housing, but I guess I'm trying to get a sense of how much wiggle room there is in terms of this 85 unit, 8-story. And if that doesn't go forward, you're left with 69 unit, 6-story. And I guess it's really kind of a general question that may be hard to answer, but how much negotiate, and it wouldn't be negotiation with us, it would be with city council, I'm sure. But do you see a middle ground that might sort of ease this along?
There's a lot coming out of this meeting that I think we're going to take back to the drawing board and study. One thing that I can kind of think of just right off the bat is, a rendering or just a study of what the two buildings look like and see if there's much difference. I mean, I completely hear the neighbors. I totally understand where their point of view is. But I'm not sure it's going to make that big a difference. And we maybe there's other things we can do. And that maybe is a discussion with the neighbors who are directly adjacent to us, right? And maybe there's other, so I think there's, we do have creative designers, architects, and other engineers on board who can think about ideas. But I think that's what we're gonna go back and just understand what we can do. I can't tell you right now or exactly, but what I will tell you is, the bigger building, again, it's a beautiful building and it's going to take a lot of investment, and that's but it's a tougher path. It's going to take a lot more of our time. There's going to be a lot more input from commissions, public, even negotiations, as you kind of mentioned, versus just the easy route. At some point, the easy route, I hate to say it, but at some point we could get just pushed into the easier route, and maybe that's not the best. I mean, I guess that's my point is, at the end of the day, there could be a middle road. So I do want to open that up. I want to maybe offer up a meeting with the neighbors and maybe do some more studies and then kind of talk through the various options we've got here.
Thank you.
Vice Chair G.
Yeah, I had a question also for the applicant. Do you have a sense of what the current rates are for the different housing units in the building? I believe Commissioner Aiken had referenced that potentially some of these units are low income or very low income. I just was wondering if you had a sense of what the rates are currently for the building.
Yeah, I don't have those in front of me. I don't think we have protected tenants. And again, I can't speak exactly, and I think we don't even have him here to answer that. But what I will say is the Palo Alto's ordinance is very, very clear, and it also has not only these relocation fees for everybody, even if that person is a high income person or a family, but it also protects the lower side. And there is a situation where these new affordable units that, by the way, are restricted for a long period of time, would be offered to anyone in 332 who qualifies. And so
I guess
really,
my question is less about maybe the income side, but more about like how much does it cost right now to rent a 1 bedroom? Or I don't actually know the configuration of the current building.
I'm sorry, I don't even think there's anything for rent, to be honest with you, but I don't have the numbers in front of us.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no lights, we're going to close public comment right now. Wanted to ask my colleagues if we want to take a short break now before we resume PTC discussion. I am seeing people nod, so we're going to take a 10-minute break right now. It is 7:46. We'll be back at 7:56. All right, everybody, welcome back. Hello, commissioners. All right. We're sorry you're not here, Commissioner G, to enjoy cookies. All right. Please light it up if you've got comments or questions. I think what we're going to do is take this in rounds. So we'll each go one round and then we can go around if there's more that we want to comment on. So Commissioner Heckman.
Thank you. So I want to thank the applicant for the proposal, for looking at a way to thoughtfully add housing in an area that needs more housing. I want to thank the neighbors, both the ones that appeared, the ones who spoke, the ones who wrote, and maybe are watching online, for that feedback. This is early in this PHC process. It's been mentioned a couple of times. And so the dialogue is really important, and getting the issues out on the table is really important so that the applicant can hear them and decide what they can and are willing to do with those items. But we do have this backdrop that I want to make sure that the neighborhood understands, that there's this alternate proposal that will be 69 feet. It will be 69 units. I think if I got those number right, roughly 65 feet, 69 units. And you'll have less that you can say about that than you can say about this. And so, and one of the things that could push the property owners in that direction is if this PHC process takes forever. So while I heard some people tonight, some members of the public, make some, cogent suggestions that slow this train down, don't move this on to ARB. I personally don't want to do that. I want us to be moving. This is definitely coming back. ARB has up to 3 hearings, and I don't want to take this potential development off the rails in favor of the SB 79 while we're still sort of shaping what this might be, so that we can determine if it's going to be better. And so I hope that that's where this will go after tonight. Let's see. I want to say one thing that I like very much about the proposal is the unit spread. There's not one studio; it's all 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms, and I like that a lot. I will talk about the BMR issue in a minute. The daylight plane issue is really I think I've made clear in past hearings that unless we're next to single family, I'm not a big fan of the daylight plane. I feel like the cost benefit doesn't work. The cost is a loss of units or smaller units. The benefit as you're up higher, I believe, is negligible or something more. I noticed that, we look at the Casa Real building, right? That is 80 plus feet. It's a monolith. There is no step back. But nobody's talking about how that, nobody here is, I've heard talk about how that really, ruins their quality of life, affects, the shadowing at a certain type of day, ruins it. But that's not to discount the lived experience of the people around this project if it's built and they're used to having a 2-story apartment building next to them, and now something higher is going to be built. It's something that is going to happen in our urban core of Palo Alto, close to transportation, because that's where the density is going to go. So we're going to go higher in these neighborhoods, and there will be some growing pains. Let's see. The bike storage. I would like as a input for the owner developer, I would like you to look at as this moves forward, how can you increase the bike storage? You've got 82 units and 82 bikes, right? But you've got 2 and 3 bedroom places, and there can be people can have more than one bike per unit. Because you could have in a 3 bedroom, you can have a family of 4 or 5 in there, and they're going to have more than one bike. And so I don't know if you're looking at stacking. But I think there are some ways, just like we do with cars, to make the storage more efficient. I'd encourage you to look at that and see if you can at least make that 1.5 times, if not 2 times, the number of units. Because this is a great place to have a bikeable unit, but we need enough bikes for the people that want to have a bikeable unit to bike. So we need a place for them, and it shouldn't be in their apartment. Let's see, the offsite BMR. This one, it's novel, but I can't get my arms around it right now, because what it feels like to me is that we won't get any more affordable housing, right? I mean, like if somebody had already, so right now we've got 16 units that sound like they may naturally be at affordable prices. And if somebody in some other part of town had bought it and locked it down with this deed restriction, then we couldn't have more units here. And so one concern I have is if we allow that to happen here, wherever those 16 units are, those are existing, and we're going to lock down that site so it can't have more density. The other problem I see is we're not growing our affordable housing stock when we do this. And so, but I think the development team mentioned something that might be the key to this. And that is, we're not talking about just, it likely would be, I thought I heard it could be more than 16 and maybe an upgrade. So, and I'm just throwing ideas out. Your SB 79 project here has 9 units. So it seems to me that's the minimum of new units we would get if you build the SB 79. So if 20% is 16 here, I think maybe you should be looking at 16 plus 9 someplace else. And again, I think this is going to be a really challenging issue as it goes forward because we've never done it before. And so, but I still don't understand how we're going to grow our affordable housing stock, because if the next 1,000 market rate units do this for their 20%, then all they're just going to do is take 20% of the existing BMRs off the market for redevelopment. And so we will have ended up with 1,000 new units with 0 new affordables. And so that's the conceptual problem that I'm having with that. And the final point I wanted to make in this first round is I think that and I think staff has already got this on their list. As this moves forward to ARB, be prepared to explain to ARB how the lot line adjustment does or does not affect the legal non-conforming status of Casa Real. I think that's, again, I don't think that's worth coming back here for. And we'll eventually hear it. But I think it's a good question that needs a solid defensible answer. Thank you.
We'll have, is this you? Right here. Okay, Commissioner Templeton, and then I thought I saw another light. Okay, just Commissioner Templeton for now.
Thanks for that excellent segue, Commissioner Heckman. I also was struck by the question from the public commenter about the legality or illegality of what's being put before us. So just wanted to ask staff before I get to my other questions, can you comment on whether we're being asked to do something that's not legal?
Absolutely. Thank you for that opportunity to share. There are a couple of components to this. One is that's what's before you in this project that's being considered in the process. The purpose of it is to allow something that isn't allowed under the regular zoning. That's what this custom zoning process is for, and why we have so many opportunities for discussion, consideration by multiple boards. In this case, one of the things that was pointed out was a concern about non-conforming on the Casa Royale site. And one opportunity for to ensure that the lot line adjustment is legal is having that PC or PHZ zone actually be covering both sites, because then you are customizing the regulations for both sites to make it clear that it's gone through the full consideration, and then the lot line adjustment could be consistent with what those rules are that the council adopts. So there are methods, and that is part of the process, the legal process that's set out in the code.
And is that what we're not considering that tonight, or we are considering that tonight? I think my understanding was we're considering whether ARB should hear this next.
Correct. But at this point, it's an opportunity to provide initial feedback. And then if the ARB will take a look at the architectural design, and then it will return to you. We will, at the staff level, ensure that we have the detailed information so that we can describe fully the findings and what's before you when you are actually making a recommendation on the project.
Okay.
The next step.
Okay, and so you guys will be exploring that behind the scenes between now and the next time we see it.
Correct.
And if there's something you want to recommend, we will hear from it how to make this thing legal.
Correct.
Okay, thank you for clearing that up, because that is definitely on a lot of our minds. I am intrigued by this project, and I think that a lot of the comments have hit a common theme that I think about a lot, that we deal with a lot on the Planning Commission. One of the themes is, if you own a property, can you develop it? Right? Like, that's what happened here. Someone owns the property and it has not been developed beyond a certain height limit yet. And then the question is, who owns the height above the property, right? Real estate law would tell you that the property owner owns that right. And so then what happens to the people who are currently enjoying that view when the property owner has to or chooses to develop it further? And for me, I grew up in another part of the country, and we dealt with this a lot because of the bodies of water that were everywhere around. Somebody was always trying to develop one step closer to the water than you and impeding your view. And of course, it's good to see that people are enjoying the views they have, but the question is, do they have the right to perpetual enjoyment of that view if somebody else owns the property underneath it? And what do they get in exchange is the rest of the question, right? What is the public benefit of developing higher and interfering potentially with other enjoyments that people are having of their own property? So the primary benefit that was described, at least as what resonated with me, was the first slide when it said this would be like 25% of the development needed downtown. It was very appealing to me. When I think about all the other projects we're going to be dealing with and facing, to think that we could make some substantial progress is very exciting. So that's one aspect I like about going bigger, having the family-sized units, working in community with your neighboring property, which you own, which the applicant owns. But it's also good to hear that the property owners are interested in working with the neighbors and getting their input to figure out, how do we make this a benefit for you? We can recognize and acknowledge that you are going to lose something, right? Some perspective that they have on how they enjoy your property. But in the end, the benefit of having people living close to transit, living close to downtown, living close to the retail and shopping areas, I think that will really benefit the economics of the downtown area in the long term as well. So I'm excited about the project. As far as being able to go up to the edge of the lot lines, I think it would be welcome to me to hear ways to do this that work with the regulations, and also to understand that I think that's going to be the conversation you need to have, that the applicant needs to have with the neighbors, is what does it, how does it affect you? The biggest thing we've heard tonight was the trees. Don't kill those trees. Figure that out. Like, that's the weakness in your proposal. So I will leave it at that for now, and I know we're going to come back, but I appreciate you all coming out, the neighbors especially, for speaking up and starting this dialogue. It's really on you to get those meetings and to share and work it out with your adjacent property owners, right? They live here too. They understand you and they respect you, or else they wouldn't be going through this process this way. They literally intentionally opened it up to get more feedback from the neighbors. So I hope that you'll take advantage of that opportunity. Thanks.
Commissioner G, Vice Chair G.
Thank you, Chair. And I will jump on Commissioner Templeton's segue. We're really just kind of all segueing together, in that the whole point of the PHZ process is to be a discussion with the neighbors. I talk about that very in depth because, as the commissioners know, I participated in a 3-year PC PHZ process myself. And in this situation, the developers really could have bypassed all of us and just gone with the SB 79 proposal. And so I think that my statement for the neighbors is to think about what's really important to you. Is it daylight plane? Is it the trees? Is it the massing? And kind of hone in on specific areas in which the developer can learn about and learn from, in terms of what areas there are a potential to negotiate with. So I'll start with that. And I think that you'll find that because this group, we've seen them in a couple different proposals around town, they are very Palo Alto based. And I think that's really important, unlike some of the other developers we have seen who maybe just want to build a large mass and leave. The Giovanotto family has been here for a long time and continue to operate business here. And I think that there's a lot of interest here to work with the neighbors. So I'll start with that. I will also join my fellow commissioners by saying that I'm pretty excited about the idea of housing at this location. I do think that the four corners metaphor that was provided by the applicant is pretty apt here. It does seem like it fits in with the corner. I'm excited about the location. It's relatively close to downtown. It's right next to City Hall. You have a lot of easy amenities to walk to. And I'm pretty supportive of the idea of housing at this location. But as some of the commissioners know, I'm very sensitive about issues like daylight plane. That is one of the reasons that I have become an expert in this, was working on my own PC case regarding this. And so I would like to see in a future iteration of this project potentially showing some more of the diagramming. So, for example, that's why I asked the question during clarifying, how much of a discrepancy is there between what we are requiring and what the building is proposed? I think it's very hard, at least for me personally, to tell that discrepancy on the diagrams as is. The other thing I want to mention is that the way I see the PC-PHZ process in terms of it coming back to the PTC is that the PTC provides kind of a general envelope in terms of guidance, but then the ARB will go ahead and provide its architectural feedback. And the reason why I bring this up is because if we were to say, for example, that we do not think that sharing the property back and forth for the lot line change is what we would recommend, well, then the building itself will probably change pretty significantly. And it may not make sense for the ARB to review the architectural design of the building before we even decide on what the building envelope even looks like from the get-go. So those are my comments for the first round. I'll let other commissioners weigh in before I jump in again.
Commissioner Aiken?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I also will just make a few not particularly well organized comments and then try and put things together for the next round. I am pretty much unconcerned about offsite BMR. And for me, the analogy of in lieu fees being used to support BMR construction elsewhere is a pretty close one. So I don't have a particular problem with the units being delivered offsite. I am struggling with the concerns about quantity, which I think Commissioner Heckman described ably, and I referenced in my own comments as well. If you haven't seen the recent Cal Matters article on how well we're doing statewide on producing affordable housing, the answer is abysmally. And so we need to exploit any opportunity we might have to advance that cause. Where that dovetails with our decision tonight is if you decided that the BMR units we were getting as a result of the project were an insufficient public benefit, would that change the deliberations the ARB needed to make on the design of the project? So that's what I'm going to try and figure out in the next few minutes where I stand on that. Otherwise, thank you for a creative and beautiful design in so many respects. I appreciate the attention to functionality in many respects. This has also been an extraordinary set of public comments. You folks have expressed a great deal of complex information very clearly and with a lot of depth, and that helps us immeasurably. Thank you for that. That's it for this round.
Commissioner James.
I'd like to echo.
Microphone, please. Microphone.
Oh, beg your pardon. Too many switches. I'd like to echo some of my feelings on some of those issues that have been raised. I guess I'm not overly concerned about again also the offsite affordable housing, but I am concerned about the net zero, not sort of gaining any affordable housing. I think that's that's not sort of an ideal, and it's not a trend that's sort of sustainable. So I would love some creative thinking on that on the part of the applicant, if that's possible. I just think it would help, right? In terms of as Commissioner Hagan said, the public benefit question, not just more housing, which is as everyone has said, it's kind of exciting to get. These are some of the ideals that we've talked about in terms of housing, sort of walkability, all these things that we've talked about all night, public transportation. So on the whole, this is very exciting. I think we're like in this sort of zone between, again, SB 79 is the SB 79 version of this the right version, or is the PHC version the right version? There seem to be some trade-offs there, and I kind of hope maybe we can find a middle ground on that. Parking, we've sort of covered that. The legal conforming issue on the lot line sounds like that can be resolved, but I mean, I think there's some common interest in having that examined a little bit more. But if it can be covered and resolved by the PHC process. But that is, a concerning element. So all in all, I think it's like, I'm just trying to think about sort of what is the right sort of process for this to move forward. And I'm interested in what my colleagues have to say about that.
Okay, so I will take my turn. So this project has a lot of really good things about it. I mean, when you look at the renderings, it looks pretty good. Phenomenal on the unit sizes. I really appreciate that 60% of the units are more than a one bedroom. And usually what we see here are units that are very small studios or very small one bedrooms. And so it was really nice to see that the one bedrooms are a good size at 640 square feet. Like you could really have two people living there. Secondly, that the two bedrooms are 950 to 1400 square feet. So that's super roomy. And you could definitely even have a family of four living in one of those. So I appreciate that. I also appreciate the creativity in terms of the open space and also the offsite BMR. I mean, we need to use all tools that we can to meet our housing requirements. Glad that there's acceptable amounts of parking relative to our residential requirements. I'm not sure that I personally agree with those requirements because, as many of our public commenters said, a family of two is likely coming with two cars. But that said, that's what we require. So I appreciate that you kept that in mind. And it is consistent with SOFA in terms of starting with the highest height closest to university and then ramping down from there. But the problem is that the project is pretty good until you widen your point of view. So all of the renderings that we saw provided by the applicant cut it off at the edge so you don't see the perspective of the condos on two sides. And so at that point, we start looking at the impacts on current residents and neighbors. So I am very concerned about the current residents who are living there. If I understand correctly, our relocation assistance, there's a financial amount, but then I look at how much notice these families need to be given. And I believe it's a month or 2 months, depending on the situation, depending on how long they've lived in that unit. And if I were a family with my kids in the district, and I only got a month or 2 months, that would be terrifying. I would have to uproot my children. So staff, could you please confirm that that is indeed our policy? I'm not really sure how much notice needs to be given to. Yeah, so I know that it happens all the time, but it's also something that because we're looking at a PHZ or a PC, planned community, where we need to look at the costs and the benefits of it, there may be room to have a conversation about this so that if this project moves forward, those 16 families get adequate notice, because I think we all know from a practical standpoint, getting 1 or 2 months notice and a couple $1,000s is not going to make them whole. So not that we necessarily have the ability to, but that is a very real concern, especially because, again, I don't know what the layout is of those units, but I certainly would like to see the next time this comes to us, how many one bedrooms, how many two bedrooms, what are the sizes of those units? What are the current rents being charged? So that we can understand what we're actually benefiting from as a community in terms of affordable housing versus what we're losing when we're displacing 16 families. I am also concerned about the offsite affordable housing. The reason we have inclusionary housing is that we don't want to create entire neighborhoods of people who are subpar. So that's why we want inclusionary housing. And so if we were doing this, again, I would want to make sure that the benefit we get from potentially having more than the typical 20% for PHZ projects would offset the fact that these units might be somewhere else entirely. So we can look at things like proximity to the current project. We can look at how much we are getting at what level of affordability. The other thing that concerns me is very much like what Commissioner Heckman said. It introduces this other problem where if other units become deed restricted, we're kind of cutting ourselves off at the knees in terms of being able to build additional housing in those developments. So I think that if we're looking at offsite affordable housing, we have to be very careful about the precedents that we set. One of my greatest concerns is these units are going to be beautiful and large and command very high rents, especially the ones that are at 8 stories, if that is the case. This is luxury housing that we could be getting. And so what I want to make sure is that whatever BMR housing that we do get elsewhere, we're getting a comparable amount or more on a per square, like a rent per square foot basis. Because again, we're trading off the costs and the benefits of this project. That's what we do with the planned community. And then finally, for now, there's several other issues that I'm actually very concerned about. First off, this is a larger issue than just this project. This project violates our code. It violates our PC code. And so I would like to hear again from Councillor Yang about how it's okay that even though the special considerations for a PC say that the project shouldn't be more than 50 feet and that the daylight plane should be of the abutting neighbor should be adhered to, like the reason why our PC code has those pieces in it is because we as a city wanted to be sensitive to the neighbors of any PC. So I would like to hear from Councillor Yang about that.
Yeah, and so in short, it's because a PC is a zoning ordinance, and it's a zoning ordinance that has the same kind of level of dignity and ability to change our code as the ordinance that adopted those special considerations. And so if in that process of adopting a zoning ordinance, the current city council wishes to approve something that is different from what a previous city council adopted, they have the authority to do that. And that previous city council can't take that authority away from the one that is currently sitting.
So thank you very much for that summary, because that is an answer that I have heard you give before, Councillor Yang. I think what this does, though, is if we see our city council continually overriding something that is on the books, that talks about the process that we go through for a PC or a PHC, which is using the PC process, that erodes public trust in our government. And so if the city council wants to do this, what we need to do then is remove that section of special requirements and special considerations for PCs. Because right now we essentially have two competing ordinances and one overrides the other, but they're both there. So we're in conflict with ourselves. And so that is one thing, what guarantee do our residents have of anything? And that is something that's a much larger concern that we need to think about. One thing that I mentioned about that I forgot to mention about the offsite affordable housing is the applicant made a mention of rehabbed units. And so I would like it if staff could explain to us what our ordinance says about remodeled units? Because I'm not familiar with that section of the code.
I'm going to need a few moments to research that, but I can get back to you.
But on principle, I think my objection also to the offsite BMR units is that they should have the same lifespan as they would have if they were in a brand newly constructed building. Again, so that we have an apples to apples comparison. And if for some reason we're accepting older units that are remodeled, then again, we need to come up with some sort of formula in which we can say this is how we trade it off, because this would be precedent setting. So maybe I'll just highlight a few of the other concerns. There's the lot line adjustment, but it sounds like there's a legal way to address that. The removal of parking for adjacent parcels. The main issue with the daylight plane is is massing and privacy, and that is something that we need to think very carefully about, because when we adopted the special requirements for a PC before, we were trying to honor that for our neighbors. So it's not just about the view, as Commissioner Coupleton mentioned, it is also about the massing, because if something is 20 feet away from you and it's just a straight wall up, that is not just about the view. There's noise, there's everything else. There's people looking into your windows. And so now suddenly neighbors might not be able to have their windows without a shade. So those are my, I think the exhaust issue, which the applicant already mentioned, is something that they could work on, because to have exhaust 20 feet from my window and affecting my air quality is something that we try and have our ordinances designed so that that doesn't happen. And then the historical status of the adjacent parcel, as well as the demolition of that garage, that's something that we have to look at. Trees, and then as Commissioner Heckman mentioned, the bike parking, because if we really are having this family-friendly housing, no family I know owns just one bike. It's one bike per person. All right, that's it for now. Second round, commissioners.
And here, I do have some more information about the rehabilitation.
Great, thank you.
So our inclusionary housing ordinance does speak to rehabilitation and conversion of existing market rate housing as a potential alternative means of compliance. And there are a variety of requirements. The most salient is that the value of the work that is put into the existing units must be at least 25% of the post-rehab value of the property, including the land value.
Could you just, for all of our benefit, because again, we're not familiar with this section, could you give us the section of the code that is in so that we can research it on our own?
Yes, that is in section 1665.080, and it's subsection E, as in Edward, that speaks to rehabilitation.
Okay, great, thank you. Commissioner Heckman.
Thank you. So sort of some, I'll call them reactive second round comments. On public benefit, my belief is that providing housing in a statewide declared housing shortage is a public benefit, and I think our comprehensive plan acknowledges that. So I don't really have an issue with making a finding that this project provides a public benefit. The offsite BMRs, I guess my thought on this is that the applicant should really work with staff on this. What I'm concerned is when I looked at the schedule that the staff put up earlier, it's a long time before you get to city council. And you don't want to get all the way to city council and be told, yeah, that's not going to work. And so, front load that, again, the fact that I can't see it clearly means nothing. But you got a lot of really good minds on your side and on our staff figure that out as this goes forward, so it does not be, it doesn't end up being the thing that hamstrings you. And the other thing that was interesting, one of the we often talk about BMRs in terms of inclusionary housing and sort of integrating them into, a larger, dispersing them. But one of the things I don't think that should or is a universal rule. Right now, you've got a 16-unit apartment complex there, and we heard a public comment tonight, and I think I read 2 or 3 more that were sent in. Everybody, the tenants there seem to like it. It's a family place, and I didn't hear any complaints that I wish I were interspersed with, somebody who had a much more expensive unit. And so as you're looking off-site for places, I don't know that they have to be dispersed throughout the community. But anyway, enough about that. I will say that I do have some familiarity with the relocation of tenants, and in the last decade, maybe more, state law has become much more protective of residential tenants. And it's a lot more than a couple months and a couple $1,000s. It is a significant economic undertaking for somebody who has a residential property to relocate, to follow the state law requirements, apart from any local ordinances, to provide those people what they are legally entitled to. And so, but it is significant. And then finally, sort of coming back to the daylight plane issue, really and I think this property highlights it. When we're talking about daylight plane and are we planning for today or tomorrow? Because if we're planning for today, then we have to ask ourselves, well, we're gonna maybe, we have, I think it's 707, right? Those 19 condo 2-story, right? We're gonna, be tall in front of them. We're going to shade them, whatever it is. But if we're planning for tomorrow, I think we need to recognize that those 19 units are, through the evolution of our city, have become an underutilization of that land. And I think in the future, I don't know how soon, but there's going to be a time where the market is going to buy off those units and make each of those owners wealthier. And it's going to build something else. And that is going to rise up next to this 6 or 8-story building. And so I think as we look at daylight planes, we have to ask ourselves, what's likely to be next door in the future, not just what's there today. So I hope that's a part of the dialogue as this moves forward. And those are my, well, I'd like to move this forward. I think it's been a great discussion in many, many ways. I'd like for the next step to be this moves forward to the ARB.
Commissioner Aiken.
Thank you, Chair. I am also leaning towards moving forward to the ARB, but I think I need to make it clear that if what we're seeing today in terms of the physical design and the lack of increase in BMR units, if that's still the case when it comes back to us, then I wouldn't support the project. So this is something that really needs to be addressed up front. With respect to the physical design, I trust the ARB to work with you, come up with some creative solutions to address as many of the problems, as many of the impacts on the neighbors as possible. For example, we talk a lot about daylight planes, but there are other options. There are step backs, for example. There's articulation of the facades. These are things that the ARB is expert in, and we're not. So it makes sense to try and get them involved to work through that stuff. yeah, the number of BMR units needs to increase. However, that is done. And the problem of kicking the can down the road that Commissioner Heckman described worries me as well. So even if you have a source of units that could be rehabilitated to provide BMR housing, there are future costs for that as well. So if we're trying to balance the decision about what we do today with what might happen in the future, then that is just as much an issue as whether a new development will result in the destruction of an existing development. Yeah, at any rate, I think these are hard problems and we don't have clear-cut solutions. But I think if we can make some progress with the ARB, it's probably worth it, provided that the applicant understands that there is significant pushback waiting if things don't get addressed. Thank you.
Vice Chair G.
Thank you, Chair. And I think that for the exact reason that Commissioner Heckman said that we don't want to see issues bubble up at City Council and come back to us is the reason that at this point I'm leaning towards continuing this item within us. It's significantly easier, for example, to get time with the PTC. So, for example, than it is with council. So, if we were to make it all the way to council and then have it sent all the way back to us, it would take quite significantly longer time and more delays. And there are a couple things that I think at this point, in my opinion, don't seem fully baked. So one is the on-site offsite BMR issue. I won't relitigate that. I think my fellow colleagues have said that more eloquently than me. But for me, I have two main things to think about. So one is that I echo the chair's comments about the daylight plane. It's not necessarily just about appreciation of light and air above someone else's property. It's about protecting the way of life that the neighbors have right now. And the whole point of why we have the PC code written as is to have some kind of guarantees for the neighbors in terms of quality of life and other ways of their existence in the city. And for that reason, I have heard from staff that we could throw the Casa Real property into this PC as well if there are any, for example, FAR or other issues. Actually, Stephen or Jennifer, did you get a chance to calculate that out? Or is that not something we want to do at this time?
We do not have those values.
Okay, so for example, that's something that I'd like to see relitigated because while we could just throw both properties into a single PC, I would describe that as basically sweeping the problem under the rug, right? Oh, it may be that we are creating an even more non-complying building, but that's okay because the PC process allows us to just ignore those issues, right? We have a section of code that prevents us from creating even more non-complying buildings, right? And the reason why we have that code is to protect us from continuing to non-comply with the code that we have. And I think that this lot line issue is something that we should resolve before moving to the ARB. As stated in my first round of comments, the way that I think about the process is that the PTC will help draw the general box of the property, and since we don't even know whether or not the parcel that we may have to change the lot line for might get included in this building, I think it would pretty significantly potentially change the building design. And at this point, for me, it makes more sense to come back to the PTC before passing that on to the ARB. In addition, I want to highlight, for example, daylight plane diagrams and rents for existing units as other additional items that I'd like to see if it were before it comes back to us again. Thank you.
Commissioner James.
So I guess my wish here is that this could go to ARB and with some creative problem solving, address all of our major concerns and come back to us with a proposal that it would be apparent to everyone that, you know, this was a great solution between SB 79 and the current proposal. And, you know, I feel like that is a kind of logical next step. I do appreciate Commissioner Aiken's clarity on the big concerns that we would hope wouldn't come back to us, and that going to ARB and coming back is not sort of a rubber stamp. So we're still, our concerns aren't going to disappear. So I would love for the applicant to have the opportunity to make this project, which has a tremendous amount of potential, the most appealing that it could be to, you know, everyone, which is a hard task. But we have concerns. I think we've articulated them. The neighbors have articulated them. It's a great starting point, I think, and hope that it can sort of be further refined to kind of address our collective concerns at the ARB.
Commissioner Templeton.
One thing I did not explicitly weigh in on earlier was the BMR question. Just to make it really clear, I think we're all agreed. That's an area where your proposal can significantly improve. Thanks.
So for my second round, this is my concern. So what I would hate, this project has a lot of potential. I also do not want to slow it down. But what I've seen happen before is that we say, go on to the ARB and fix these issues. And they spend, the applicant spends a lot of time with the ARB. And it comes back to us and those issues are not fixed. And so then, because we have this sequential process, we've wasted a whole bunch of time. And what I'm seeing with this project is, again, I don't know exactly why the applicant chose to propose offsite BMR. What I've also seen with many other projects is that once the BMR considerations are taken, once the boundaries of the BMR consideration are taken into account, it could actually change the economics of the project. We've seen, sometimes the units change their makeup. Instead of one bedrooms, we see studios. So it actually starts changing the architecture of the building, not just the internal, but the outside envelope. And similarly, if there are changes that are made to address massing, maybe daylight plane cannot be addressed in a way that makes the project pencil out. But there's a big difference. What the daylight plane's also doing is making sure that when you look out your window, it's not a wall at 20 feet, but maybe a wall at 30 feet away from you. So articulation can do that. There's all sorts of things that could be creatively done, but those would also potentially change the finances of the project. And this council did not see this project with a concrete, well, they didn't even know about the offsite BMR proposal. There's enough about what that could be that I would hate for us to move forward all the way through the ARB, even come back to us and it's okay with us. And it goes to council and council's like, well, that BMR calculus does not work for us. And then we start over. So what I want to ask staff is there some way to parallel process some of this? Because that's a pretty significant issue for which neither us nor the applicant knows what the potential solutions may be. Nobody knows what might pencil out. Nobody's run those numbers. And I would like to see that issue, frankly, addressed with council so that we don't have this churn that we have seen with other projects.
I mean, so to start, we have the standard process. The question was, is there a possibility to, as we move forward with ARB, to have some additional discussions, maybe with PTC, maybe with council? It's not something that's laid out in the code. And so the question of whether it can be added on. Mr. Yang, I don't know legally whether there would be concerns about suggesting that. We have I'm thinking through the different implications as working to try and provide you an answer to this. And one of them has to do with staff time. That's cost recovery for this type of project. But also, as was mentioned, it's difficult to get time on the agenda with council. So I'm not sure whether they would choose to add that since they have had their initial discussion of it. I don't know that I've got a clearer answer than that for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it would be really helpful to the PTC and the ARB and probably the applicant to know what exactly council would want, because we're guessing, we're all guessing. And on the one hand, we have this really laid out, code that talks about how we go through a PC process. And yet at the same time, we just ignore the special requirements section of that. So it's a little bit confusing what we're actually doing here. It's not transparent to the public, which bothers me. And in general, it's always better to have more input into a process early. And we've seen how long it takes to get through the full PHZ process. And and like everybody has said here, there's tremendous opportunity here. It is a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I would hate for it to, it gets to the point where the applicant just needs to default to something that's less optimal if there was actually a way to make this work. So staff doesn't have a lot of comments about that.
Right. I don't know that we could require them to go back to
Oh, no, I'm not
council.
suggesting that we require them. I would imagine that the applicant would be happy to get more input early because it would short circuit the process for them, or at least eliminate the turn that I'm sure they have seen also with other projects. So I know that we can't require it, but if they requested it, is that something that we in our city process could accommodate?
If they requested it, I think we could look into that as a possibility. I can't give you an absolute 100% yes, but if they requested it, I think that may be an option.
So my advice to the applicant would be to take a good look at that stuff, because since the council is the ultimate decider here, there are some literally unprecedented issues. And so it would be really good to make sure that those aren't a massive stumbling block before you go through final architecture plans. All right. So with that, I don't see any other lights. Would somebody like to make a motion? Commissioner Heckman?
Yes, thank you. The PTC having provided initial comments and feedback, which staff and the applicant has heard, I move the staff recommendation to move the project forward to the ARB for review of the development plan.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, do we have any discussion? It sounds like Commissioner. Is this you? Oh, okay. Vice Chair G.
Yes, I was wondering if the motion maker and seconder may be open to a friendly amendment to have the information about the lot line, the Casa Real potential non-compliance, the historical analysis, daylight plane diagram, and rents for existing units as information provided before it comes back to us?
I guess my thought on that is we've said it. We have some expectations, and I think the applicant will proceed at their own risk if they, having gone through ARB, come back to us without that information. Because I think in that scenario, they're likely to get a continuance from us. We told you we needed to see this. You haven't provided it. You've had months. So I would prefer, rather than to require it, to know that they've heard it and they know what our expectations are. Because and you've only named a few of them. I think there were a variety of other things that we brought up that we're expecting to see when this comes back. And so I don't want to create a list that they think is exclusive when in fact it's just some of the things that we're expecting.
Sure. Then I would be open to adding the words "including but not limited to."
I'm going to decline to amend the motion.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Templeton.
Thanks. I just think that both things can be done. I think everything that we have asked for, including what Vice Chair G mentioned, and all of the rest of us have asked for information to come back, is expected, and that staff understands that. I'm seeing some nods out here. So I would just want to explicitly say that that is part of our process, because they asked for this feedback and we told them this is what we need. And I say this because I hope that you'll support the motion. But if you want to discuss that further, to me, it's understood if we ask for something, we want it, whether it's explicitly stated in the motion or not. Thanks.
Yeah, so I think part of it is also not just for the applicant, it's also for staff. Some of the discussions that we've been having and seem to be that we're moving towards a direction where we help staff by listing some of the explicit information that we're looking back, because we have seen sometimes where not everything is fully captured. And when we see something again, that we may not get all the information that we're having. So I'm also using this as a point of record. So for example, the lot line legal non-compliance, I wouldn't say it's something that I would expect the applicant to do at all, right? That's something that staff we would look for. But I'm hoping to incorporate some of this information in the motion to help. So when we look back at this the second time, to also have the motion captured the part of the discussion.
Assistant Director Armour has a comment.
Yes, I thought I might be able to provide some clarification. When we do, the next time that it is scheduled to come back to the Planning and Transportation Commission would be for a recommendation. So any legal issues, including the lot line adjustment, would be resolved at that stage. The environmental review would be completed at that stage, which includes the historic, the arborist report and peer review, all of the draft conditions of approval. We have heard an interest in better understanding the relationship between the development and the daylight plane, so I would expect we would have that as well. And the interest in knowing the affordability levels so that the conditions of approval can require the appropriate affordability levels for those BMR units. So of the things that were listed, I am confident that those will be included in what gets brought back to you at the next time. Next consideration.
I think that's fantastic, and I'm just thinking we've been discussing with the relatively recent change in how our minutes are conducted. How do we know? And I think that's what Vice Chair G, his point is how do we capture that in the documentation? What is your suggestion?
So I understand the concern, but I would say that with the combination of the new format for the meeting minutes and the recording that we have of all of these meetings, we have all of those details. And staff will work to lay out the subjects that were brought up tonight, and ensure that we've got responses from the applicant on each of those subjects as to what information they can provide, and why they do or don't, or what those limitations are, to try and absolutely get any of the legal issues resolved, in an effort to, provide a response to all of those concerns, and hopefully revisions in response to those concerns.
Okay, then I don't see other lights for discussion. So I guess we can vote.
Commissioner Aiken.
Yes.
Commissioner Heckman.
Yes.
Commissioner James.
Yes.
Commissioner Templeton.
Yes.
Vice Chair G.
No.
Chair Chang.
No.
Motion carries 4-2.
So remind me, we speak to our no votes in this situation?
Yes, you may.
Okay. Commissioner or Vice Chair G, would you like to speak to your no vote?
Yes. So the crux for me about this, as stated in my previous comment, is that I would hate to waste more time in the process for information that may change the building pretty significantly. Like my fellow commissioners, I do trust the ARB in providing pretty good guidance on different methods to improve the building architecture and, for example, other privacy screening. But that is a little bit moot if by the next time it comes to us, because we determine some lot line issues or because we determine any BMR changes, that the entire building is pretty different. And that would have basically wasted the entire time of the ARB. So at this time, I think that it would have been more appropriate to continue the item to come back to us with this and other relevant information. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair G, for everything that you've said. The lot line adjustment is not within the purview of the ARB, and so that's why I would have liked to see some of those things taken care of before we go forward. In addition, while I wish that we could parallel process more. What I have seen in terms of the narrative of how this type of vote gets replayed and then sort of miscommunicated by the press and sort of the public is that when we have a unanimous vote to move something forward, that it kind of sets us up as unanimous approval. And I don't think that is what we have here. And so in listening to my fellow commissioners, what I really wanted to do is to log that no vote so that the city council can see that this was not something that was an easy decision. There's actually quite a number of large issues. And I know that this wouldn't slow the project down. So I've just seen how the narrative shifts, and that is the reason for my no vote. Thank you. Okay, so with that, we move on to our second action item tonight, which is to review and submit the Planning and Transportation Commission work plan to the City Council for approval.
Chair, do you mind if I jump in? I actually have to drop off now, so I want to let the record show that I will not be able to vote on the next two items. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So I believe with this one, we just start with the staff report. Is that correct, Assistant Director?
Correct, though we have no staff report on this item. It is just a update to what you saw at your last meeting with 2 additional potential projects added.
Great. Okay. So let's just see if there's any public comment on this. Is there any public comment?
The chair have not received any public comment cards on this item. If there's any members of Zoom that would like to speak, please raise your hand now. There are not.
Okay, great. So then we can just move on to commissioner comments and discussion. Does anybody have any comments about the 2 new goals? Commissioner Aiken.
Yes, they look good to me, and I would be happy to support them as written.
Anybody else? Commissioner Templeton.
Thank you. It generally looks good. I guess the only thing I wanted to ask, given our very recent moments ago conversation, do we need to add anything about improving processes that help us better capture discussion with the change in minutes? If it's covered already in how we read this process, but I just wanted to make sure, since we just hit a process snag, since we're talking about improving processes and scope, is that something we want to call out explicitly or just like it's wrapped in? That's the question.
I'm always in favor of making things a little bit more explicit, primarily because of institutional memory. So I would be supportive of a, small edit somewhere. I'm assuming you would wrap this into project goal 9. Do you have suggestions for the language to put you completely on the spot? I mean, maybe we could make reference to the change in minutes. That's part of it, right?
Yeah, and I don't know that we have to have the actual answer. I think I'm just wondering, I'm thinking also about Monday and the letter that you two wrote to council. Like, is there some version of that do the minutes capture those kind of notes? Does it go through the chair and vice chair before it gets finalized? Are those the kind of revisions that come back to us? Right now, our revision process is very informal. Is that something we want to talk about? I don't know. I don't know that we have to have the answer right now. We could just say, working on capturing the notes. Sounds like Assistant Director Armour has a comment. So let's hear from her before I conjecture further.
Yes, please.
One option would be to add reference to communication with the council and other boards in the language of the goal. So instead of just communication with staff and the public, it would be to investigate and implement improvements to the PTC processes, including but not limited to technology use and communication with council, other boards, staff, and the public.
That seems like a good enough placeholder for now. And as we move forward, we can dig in deeper. That's a great suggestion. What do you guys think?
I like it.
There we go.
Sounds good to me. Okay,
Thanks.
great. Commissioner Heckman.
Ghost light.
And then that was it, right? There was no other. I don't see any other lights. So holler if there's somebody else who wants to say something. No? Okay. So then could we have a motion?
Move the staff recommendation with changes as described by AD Armour.
Oops, sorry.
Second.
Yeah, sorry, there's one more edit I wanted to.
Just kidding. We'll wait for Chair Chang's edit.
Sorry about that. One more edit, small edit, just that we make sure that the current commissioner's membership is accurately reflected. Yeah, so there's a section, right, okay. So now I think we can go ahead. So the motion on the table, if you could repeat it, please.
We did have a motion in a second. You could just ask whether they accept that amendment.
Do you accept that friendly amendment?
I do.
Me too.
Okay, great. So any further discussion? None? All right. Mr. Trevera, could you please take the vote?
Yep. Commissioner Templeton,
Yes.
Commissioner James,
Yes.
Commissioner Aiken,
Yes.
Commissioner Heckman,
Yes.
Chair Chang.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Wonderful. So next up, we've got the approval of minutes. The first is the approval of minutes, the draft summary minutes for June 10th. And Mr. Tavera, could you please remind me if we had this?
Yeah.
Did we have different attendance at the two meetings?
Yes. So Commissioner Heckman was absent for the June 10th meeting, and then Commissioner James was absent for July 8th.
Okay, so we need to take them separately.
Yeah.
So, okay, so the first item is approval of the minutes for June 10th. Any discussion?
I move approval as revised.
Second.
Thank you. I don't see any lights for discussion, so I guess I'm supposed to check for public comment too, which I completely forgot.
And through the chair, we have not received any public comment.
All right. So seeing no lights and because there's no public comment, could you please take the vote?
Yeah. Commissioner James.
Yes.
Commissioner Templeton.
Yes.
Commissioner Aiken.
Yes.
Commissioner Heckman.
Abstain.
Chair Chang.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0-1.
Great. Now we're going to address the approval of the PTC minutes for July 8th. Are there any public comments or discussion from the commission?
No public comments.
All right, could we have a motion, please?
Move approval as revised.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Great. No discussion. So Mr. Tavera, could you please take the vote again?
Yeah. Commissioner Heckman.
Yes.
Commissioner James.
Abstain.
Commissioner Aiken.
Yes.
Commissioner Templeton.
Yes.
Chair Chang.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0-1.
Thank you. On to commissioner questions, comments, and announcements or future meetings and agendas.
Hi.
Commissioner Aiken.
Oh. Go ahead. I'll go next.
I just wanted to add my thanks to Dr. Peterson for the service he's provided us. And I hope we will all take up his charge of supporting the Cal Lab businesses. Thank you.
Commissioner Templeton.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I will agree to thank Dr. Peterson. And I also want to remind everybody that I am going to be out of town next time, and I do not believe I will plan to be dialing in unless some extraordinary circumstances change, and I would provide you guys with the address. Is that right? But I'm planning to be very busy moving in my daughter to college. So, all right, see.
Commissioner Heckman.
So just to pile on the Cal Avenue and the references to forest, which have sprinkled us tonight. Yesterday, I was in Laguna Beach, and I don't know if any of you have been there, but Forest Avenue in Laguna Beach is their closest parallel to our Cal Avenue, and I've been going through there for years. It's and its transformation has somewhat mirrored Cal Avenue's. It used to be first of all, it's lined with shops. It's all retail. They have, I think, a little bit higher mix of maybe galleries and clothing shops to restaurant than Cal Ave, but it's all shops. There was angle parking, two-way street, maybe a center lane that eventually got replaced with an island, and then COVID came and they reduced the parking and they started the parklets. And this year, when I was there yesterday, it was a pedestrian mall. They have leveled it so that you go from, it's just a lovely, 20-foot brick sidewalk. And then it's either dirt or pavers all the way across the street to another 20-foot brick sidewalk. The restaurants that are there, their extra space is not on the brick. It's in that inner area, which is maybe 80 feet wide. And in lots of places, there's public seating and maybe a few places. Anyway, it was a beautiful, they're almost done with it. And it just had a great feel to it. And so I know we have a plan for Cal Ave that Commissioner that Forrest was a terrific advocate for, and I'm looking forward to that reaching fruition and having a great feel to it also.
Thank you. So now it's time for virtual public comment on items not on the agenda. Are there any hands raised?
The chair have not received any hand raised on Zoom.
Wonderful. Then we are adjourned for tonight. Thank you.